you might have an idea, of course, yeah, I want to retire. I want to be able to send my kids to college. I want to take care of my parents when they're seniors. I'd like to maybe travel. I'd like to maybe quit my job, whatever it is, that's the destination. And it's super important to get clear about that first, and then look at, well, where am I? How much am I making? How much am I spending? How much am I investing? If I continue to do this, will I get there? And unfortunately,
welcome to the J. Wells CFO Show. I'm the host, Jeremy Wells, enrolled agent, and with me today is a very special guest, someone I'm really excited to have on this show. Going to have what I think is going to be a lot of great information for you listeners out there, especially those of you working in the real estate space. Got a great story to share that I've heard on other podcasts and started listening to her own podcast. So I'm really excited to bring on this week's guest, Kathy Fettke. I'm going to let her share her story with us, tell us a little bit about her business and what she's been doing and how she got to where that is. So welcome to the show, Kathy. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we're a real estate investor group that helps people build wealth through rental properties and also through building homes and selling them at retail prices. So, but the big one is rental income. And so many people think I should be in real estate. I should buy my first house to get the tax benefits, but rental property gives so much more tax benefits than your primary residence. And a lot of people just don't understand that. So we offer a tremendous amount of education on all things that scare people away from real estate. The fear of liability, just how do I get the money, asset protection. So all the things, bad tenants, everybody's got a fear, but it only comes from lack of education. So we provide a massive amount of education. We have over almost 50,000 investors now. And again, we help them find cash flow properties nationwide that have been fully renovated and also have property management in place.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I think, as an accountant, I'm working with people that are starting small businesses or just getting into small businesses. And it's already a hurdle to get over that mindset of transitioning from the perceived safety of a normal W-2 employee type position and then going into self-employment status. That's already scary. And then you throw in the fact that you're adding on to it real estate and this idea of having this relatively large asset. I mean, for a lot of people, the largest asset they'll ever own is their home, like you said. And maybe a retirement account eventually will get bigger than that. For a lot of people's lives, their home is their biggest asset. And so to say, I'm going to go out and start buying these up and turn this into a business, I think that's a huge hurdle to get over for a lot of people. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's a lot of people out there that just can't seem to get their minds past that hurdle? And then there's this few that just go right through that hurdle and just run full speed into real estate. What makes that difference?
It really comes down to education and guts, courage. I think a lot of times people who dive right in and maybe didn't get the education, they get a real-time education, right? A lot of people, everybody has different learning styles, and some people just like to learn through experience, and they might do their first deal and lose money, but that doesn't stop them. They'll do another and make money. But the better way to do it, I don't want to say better, everybody has their learning style, but just to learn from those who have done what you want to do. And there's so much opportunity for that today. There wasn't when I started. I started 20 years ago, and the only place you could really get information was at real estate investor clubs or books or late night television, right? With some of these gurus who would teach you how to invest in real estate, but you had to pay $10,000 for their program or whatever. It was very difficult to get information when I started. So I started a podcast. I was one of the first podcasters, actually, because I had a radio show already in San Francisco. I had a degree in broadcasting and had worked in the rooms of, CNN, newsrooms of CNN, KTVU, Fox News, and ABC7 as a news reporter. But I ended up getting married, having children, and wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. But I kept this little radio show. And that is where I would, interview people to find out what they were doing to become successful. And right around then, my husband had been diagnosed with melanoma and misdiagnosed. They thought I had spread to the liver, and they told him he had 6 months to live, which is not true. He's fine today. But at the time we didn't know. And we blew through our savings, through all the medical treatment. And a lot of people have, had emergencies like this, and you can go through your savings pretty quickly. So here I was, a stay-at-home mom, 2 kids. We just bought a big house. My husband was being told he had 6 months to live. I mean, what are you going to do? So I used this show to figure out what to do. Like, how could I take over the finances so he could get off the treadmill and take care of himself? And if the doctor was right, have those 6 months, to figure it out. So what I learned was people who were able to create passive income had done it through real estate. Many had done it through real estate investments, whether it was residential properties, rental properties, single or multifamily units, or commercial properties like office buildings or medical buildings, student housing. So there's so many ways to build wealth. And I just decided, forget all these real estate clubs that are trying to sell me products that I can't afford. I'm just going to interview successful people and learn from them. And that's what I did. And here it was called The Real Wealth Show then. Our company is called Real Wealth Network today. And we continue to interview successful people to learn their secrets, share it with our audience, and then also help people find those properties that have already been renovated and have property management in place. So that was a really long answer.
No, that's great. That's great. That's yeah, a lot to unpack there. So for sure. So I love your background in journalism. I never actually worked in journalism, but I edited my high school and college newspapers. So I've always had a fondness and a sincere respect for journalists and the work they do. Even though that was a very sort of small, isolated way of doing it, but that investigative mindset, I think, carries over into a lot of other aspects. That mindset of just not taking anything for granted. You can always follow up. You can always track down one more source, and obviously that's carried over into this sort of style of podcasting, where it is trying to bring on people that have these interesting and successful stories to share. And so, really spreading the wealth and sharing the wealth of knowledge that comes with these experiences that this technology has allowed us to do. And that's a big part of why I'm trying to do this. And so again, really appreciate you coming on here and sharing with us and doing what you're doing. But yeah, that motivation, right? It became really personal. It wasn't just hey, let's make some money. There was a sincere need there. So so for those who maybe don't have quite that kind of motivation, right? For those who are just saying, I need something to do. This seems interesting. I want to get into this. Is that enough? Is that enough for somebody to get into? Because you say it's a passive income stream, but I think there's a bit of not necessarily a misnomer, but a misunderstanding that comes along with that, because passive makes it sound you just sit back and you watch all the cash flow in. But there's probably actually a lot more work that goes into setting up these passive income streams than just going to work. So what does it take to get started in this field if you don't have this intense personal event that's kind of motivating you?
Sure. I mean, we're creatures of comfort for the most part, and we'll often, as human beings, just kind of accept what we have as good enough, and that's okay. If whatever you have brings you happiness, then why would you need more? So it really comes down to planning for your future, and so many people would like to have more. They would like to have more time, more time to spend it with the people that they love. They might want to be able to retire at some point and have enough money coming in that will take care of them and pay expenses. And people are living longer. So, in the past, it was pretty easy to have a retirement because people would retire at around 65 and die around 68. So all you needed was 3 years of retirement. But that's not true anymore. If you're going to retire at 65, you might live till 105. Our kids might live to 125. So if you really want to be able to spend your time the way you want to, and you don't want to have to work forever, then you need to build something that is going to take care of you. It's not going to be the government, and it's not going to be probably your pension at work, and it's definitely not going to be Social Security. So I think a lot of people do live in this dream world that everything's just going to be fine, and they don't want to think about it, but you have to think about it. You have to think about it because or else it just catches you by surprise like it did for us. And we were doing everything that we were told we were supposed to do. We were saving 10%. We were investing 10%. We had 10% set aside for emergencies. It was like 3 different buckets that we were told we needed to have by our financial planner. And we were doing everything that they said. But boy, when you have an emergency like this, where the doctor is telling you that, one of you might be gone, now you're going to live on one income, what do you do? And like I said, we blew through the money. Now, at the time, it's not like you can build cash flow overnight. There's a process to that. So the first step is just knowing where you are. You can't, if you want to go to Phoenix, where Phoenix is, right? So your goal might be, I want to retire. I want cash flow. I want enough cash flow to cover my bills. So you know where Phoenix is on the map. But if you don't know where you are, you're not going to be able to get to Phoenix, right? So you might have an idea. Of course, I want to retire. I want to be able to send my kids to college. I want to take care of my parents when they're seniors. I'd like to maybe travel. I'd like to maybe quit my job. Whatever it is, that's the destination, and it's super important to get clear about that first, and then look at, well, where am I? How much am I making? How much am I spending? How much am I investing? If I continue to do this, will I get there? And unfortunately, there's so many distractions today, and there's so many ways to spend money, that I would say the majority of people are going to find themselves in an emergency situation. And it's a terrible thing to be in an emergency situation when you're 65 and you don't want to work anymore.
Right, absolutely. So let's step one, know where you're at. So what if we hear a lot of about millennials, right, that are coming onto the workforce, or I think I'm about as old as you can be to be a millennial. So a little bit beyond just first entering the workforce, but we hear a lot about there aren't enough jobs, and the jobs that are out there, they don't pay enough, and property prices are through the roof, and it's getting harder and harder to get that start. One, do you see that as true? And two, if I'm sitting here saying I can't find a job that gives me all this extra cash flow that I can start paying a first mortgage, much less a second one, how do I get started? How can I convince myself that I even have what it takes to even think about starting this, much less actually just go and start buying rental properties?
Well, first and foremost, nothing's really changed. So, when I was young, it was hard to get a job. It was hard to build that career. Nothing comes easy. So, nothing has really changed. The secrets to success are the same as they always have been. And some people follow them and are wildly successful, and others don't. Unfortunately, as long as I've been alive, which I'm 55 right now, there are people who might go to the same college and come out, 20 years later, one successful and the others is not. You can have 2 people from the same family, same upbringing, same neighborhood, same access to resources, and one is successful and the other is not. So it really comes down to success principles. At the end of the day, it's what's going on in here, and here, and here that make all the difference. So you got to have the knowledge, you got to have the desire, the heart, and you got to have the guts. And those things have got to be in alignment. But it really starts with the mind, in my opinion, because once you are educated, then you can get excited, because then it's one thing to kind of, I don't know, let's just use surfing. I like to surf. You watch surfers and it's like, oh, that's good for them. But, you go out, try it, and you'll get hurt, like it won't be fun. But if you start to study it and learn it, and then, you'll get addicted to it, you'll get excited, And then that's where like the learning then causes the excitement that then it gives you the energy to go do it, the guts to go do it. If you reverse that and just have the guts without the education, it's not going to work. If you have the knowledge without the desire, it's not going to really work. It's like everything has to be lined up. So for me, when I first was on this mission to understand how to take over the finances in the family, how to be a stay-at-home mom, to be able to find some kind of job that would pay me so I could still be a mom. If the doctor was right. The doctor was wrong. Rich is Healthy today. He's my partner in business and partner in raising children and partner in life. But at the time, I didn't know if the doctor was right or not. So I just started learning. Again, fortunately, I had my radio show. I could interview just about anybody. They were willing. So it was a large San Francisco radio station. And I would get millionaire after millionaire after millionaire to come on and tell us how they started. And I started to understand what their thinking was, how the wealthy think differently than most people. And this whole thing about the top 1% or the top 20% versus the rest, it's always been that way. That this is nothing new. It's basically a very small amount of people who take action and who can get the education needed, get the focus, the desire, and the action to be in that top 20% or that top 1%. In fact, I would even argue that most Americans are in that 1%, even though they might, argue they're not. In terms of the world, you're in the 1% if you live in the USA. So what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that opportunity? But within the US, it's the 80-20 rule always, no matter what. It's the 20% of people who are doing what it takes to be successful. And it's the other 80% who maybe are in the struggle, and they don't have to be. All they have to do is read a few books.
Interesting. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So let's flip that around though, because a lot of people, and I would probably include myself in this group, take the knowledge too far and get caught up in, and paralysis by analysis, and then you start running into imposter syndrome and self-doubt. And maybe if I read one more book, then I'll know enough to get started. Maybe if I maybe if I fill out one more page in my journal, then I'll motivate myself enough to get started. So at what point did you say, now I know enough, I need to get started doing this?
Well, I have the personality type of the person who dives in. So my husband is a little more analytical. He would definitely never probably take action because he does need more information. So oftentimes we are attracted to our opposite, and that's a really good thing. It's the yin, the yang. We kind of complete each other, so to speak. And if you are in a relationship, that may be the case, that one of you is maybe a little more aggressive and one is a little more conservative. The key to having that work is to really use each other's strengths. So over time, in the beginning, I dove in, I made a bunch of mistakes. Had I listened to my husband, I probably wouldn't have. Now, if my husband didn't listen to me, we wouldn't do anything, we wouldn't have kind of done these things. So now we're at a place where I want to do something. Instead of crushing that idea or like, no, we can't do it, being afraid of it. Now he's learned to just listen and ask questions. And just keep asking questions. Well, what do you mean? And where did you find this data? And, how do you see it rolling out? And what would be the first steps? And then instead of me saying, you asked too many questions, too many detail, I'll give him what he wants, because why wouldn't I? I need to do my due diligence. So sure, here's the data, and here's the plan, and here's what I intend to do. And here's the first step. And then together, we end up making really good decisions when we work together. Now, if you're single or you don't have that polarity in your relationship, you can get a coach to help you. You can get a mentor, kind of get somebody to help you move. If you're, like you said, if you're just stuck in that analysis piece, you need a partner or a mentor who's going to get you moving to the next step. A lot of times you can find those people, you could partner with them in a deal. You could be the analyst, and the person who moves too quickly is going to really need you. So you could partner up with that opposite. But left to our own devices, neither personalities do very well. We need each other. It could be your accountant. If you move too quickly, have an accountant to slow you down. Have an attorney to slow you down. If you're an accountant, get an entrepreneurial type, a salesperson type to help you move.
Absolutely. Good deal. Yeah. No, I relate to that because, that idea of partnership and, because for my own clients or prospects, I try to put it out there that, I see me as a partner. Don't just see me as your tax guy. Right. And so,
Yeah.
and I've got a guy that, helps me with marketing, and I don't just see him as my marketing guy. I see him as an advisor in the branding and the selling and all of these kinds of things. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think you get, and I've also got a mentor who helped me get started. And so, I go back to him for really detailed, specific questions, but then sometimes I go back to him just to generally chat about how things are going and, get a little bit of a lift from that. So, yeah, I think, I definitely agree with that. Definitely push that to anybody who, I start talking to about these kinds of things is, find that person that, like you said, kind of that bounces ideas off of you, doesn't take it personally, whether you run with their advice or not, but they're there to keep guiding you. They're there to keep letting you bounce ideas off of, that kind of thing.
And that's exactly why we created Real Wealth Network. So back then, like I said, I had this radio show and I was interviewing successful people. And one of those people was Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, great book. And he said, it was back in 2005, he was on the show and he said, oh, we're in a big bubble. People are not going to be able to pay off their loans. He could see it coming. He said, sell everything and buy in more affordable states that don't have a bubble, but where they have the fundamentals. And the fundamentals, see, again, these are things, once you learn it, it clicks and it all makes sense. And then you won't be able to hold yourself back, but you got to have the information first. So he explained, these bubble properties don't make sense. The cash flow, the rent on these properties don't even cover the expenses. Just doesn't make sense. People are buying crazy things. They're not gonna be able to pay these loans back. It's going to bust. But in Texas at the time, in 2005, home prices were 25% below what they should have been. They were so affordable that the average person absolutely could afford to buy one. They didn't have crazy loans in Texas at the time, and they had the highest job and population growth in the country, plus all this infrastructure growth. So if you have all these new jobs coming, all these new freeways, all these new people, they need houses. So it just made sense. So Rich and I flew out to Dallas in 2005, and we came back with 5 houses. Now this is, again, he's my partner that is slower to move, but once you've done your homework and you can see it and you've learned and you understand how to get the financing and you understand how to get the insurance that will cover losses and you understand the asset protection and you have everything in place, you've got the right financing structure, why wouldn't you do it? It just all made sense. It made so much sense. We were able to find $140,000 brand new homes that rented for $1,500 a month. In the path of progress, right, where a new freeway was coming in, where all these new jobs, it just was easy. And you only have to put, back then, I think we only had to put 5% down. So again, even easier. It cash flow with just 5% down. But today you have to put 20% down, and cash flow is less than it was at that time, but still very good. Texas now, prices have gone up so much then. I mean, those properties that we bought for $140,000 are worth $450,000, again, because we knew the fundamentals were there. It made sense. How could a neighborhood where people make $90,000 a year, be buying these mansions for $140,000? We knew that, that wasn't going to last, especially when the new freeway came in. So those properties tripled in value and the cash flow was incredible. So we helped thousands of people. So what happened, I talked about it on the radio show. I'm like, okay, we went to Texas, we listened to Kiyosaki, we bought 5 properties, we're going to go back and buy 5 more. Because again, back then it was just 5% down. We had the cash reserves to do that. And then people, our listeners of the Real Wealth Show, said, oh my gosh, we want to do that. Tell us which realtor you use, which property manager you use, which insurance company you used. We thought, oh my gosh, people really need these resources. They need help. So we started Real Wealth Network to basically create teams in these different parts of the country where it really made sense to buy property, where there was growth, job growth, population growth, infrastructure growth. but you're not maybe living there, so you don't know who to trust. So we started building teams in those areas of people we could trust. Good real estate agents who really understand the market, good property managers who, know how to get the right tenants in place. And then we made a referral-based business where, now people come to us, and we think that the area between Tampa and Orlando is now the fastest growing part of the country, kind of like Texas was 10 years ago. So we've got teams set up there to help people invest in a quote unquote turnkey way. It's not passive, like you said. You still got to do your homework. You got to get your appraisals, your inspection reports. You've got to. There's so many ways to protect yourself. You've got to go through the checklist and make sure you do those things, or you will get hurt. You will. There's no question. You can protect yourself, but it's the same thing. I could, like, my husband just went mountain biking, and he had his helmet and his gloves and his pads, and he went off a cliff and landed on his head, and he's fine. He kind of tore his shoulder, but he's going to be fine. Could have been much worse, but he had the protection. If you run out and do these things without protection, you're probably going to get hurt. So, you need to go through the checklist. You need to know what you're doing. That's why I wrote a book called Retire Rich with Rentals. My husband's name is Rich, so I think he came up with that title, Retire Rich, and Kathy with Rentals. But it has a checklist in there to help people make sure you don't miss important things. I've had people come to me and say, hey, I bought this property in Texas, and I found out there's a crack in the foundation. The seller ripped me off. And I said, well, what did the inspection report say? They're like, oh, I didn't get one. But you bought a property out of state and you didn't get an inspection? That sounds crazy, but people do it every day. And I had another guy say, hey, I bought this property. The guy ripped me off. It's not worth what I paid. Well, what did the appraisal say? Oh, I didn't get one. What? I mean, these are the most basic things. If you're buying an asset that's a $100,000 asset, spend the $400 to get an appraisal or an inspection. These are obvious things, but I can't tell you how many times I hear people that they skipped that.
There's a common theme there, and it's just in general, and it affects people in real estate, it affects people in business, because it's that trying to go cheap, just trying to avoid the cost of a professional and getting into trouble and starting to realize something doesn't seem right, and then they complain about it to everybody, and everybody starts asking them, well, who did your taxes, right? I just did TurboTax, right? And it's like, well, maybe you should get a professional to look at it, right? And like you're saying, so who did your appraisal? Nobody. Well, maybe you should get an appraisal next time, and so, I think that is one of the biggest humps I find, with that kind of new business owner or new real estate investor kind of mindset. It seems pretty universal that, they just want to do it as cheaply and as quickly as possible and get it done. And then all these problems pop up and they can't explain why. And the common response is, well, you should have hired a professional from the beginning.
Yeah. It's just people can be very spontaneous. They want quick results. But I assure you, you will fail if you try to do that. And I see it all the time. You can make so much money in real estate. I was just on a panel with 5 other women who actually listened to my podcast, The Real Wealth Show, for years, and then took action after they had learned and studied. And these women were on stage with me, just maybe started a couple of years ago, and they own thousands of doors. One of them makes $50,000 a month in cash flow. I mean, incredible things that they did in a very short amount of time. But if you look at really how long they were in it, it was longer because they'd been studying. They'd been listening to me. They'd been reading, going to other meetups, learning from other investors, but not taking action until they were truly ready. And then when they did, they're killing it, man. I was sitting on the panel going, wait, you got started because of me, and now you've surpassed me? Like, this is incredible. And just a matter of years. So, it's amazing how you can change your life when you have the information you need. Because it's the information. I really do believe this. When you have the information, you won't be afraid. You won't be. If you're afraid at all, ask yourself what you're afraid of and then find the solution to that. So if you're afraid of damage that a tenant can do to your property, then you got to ask yourself, maybe ask a professional, ask somebody who has a bunch of rentals, and you can There's tons of podcasts out there. There's tons of real estate groups. Real Wealth Network, our company, has an enormous amount of education to help you with this. But just ask, find out what do you do? How do you prevent a tenant from ruining your house? Well, there's a whole bunch of ways. It starts with screening properly, starts with background checks, investigating this potential tenant like you're a bank giving a person a loan. I mean, you've got to do these things, but still something could happen. That person could lose their job or lose their mind. I mean, you never know. People are people. But then you have the right insurance in place. And then it's like, oh, okay, I can relax. And on you go. Think about, what are these things that I'm afraid of? And let me just research that. Other people are doing it. If other people, that was what happened for me is, here I was in this desperate situation, wondering how I was going to take care of the family. We had a $4,000 a month mortgage. I hadn't been working for a few years because I'd been home with the kids. I wanted to stay home with the kids. Here I was in this, completely stressful situation, but I just made it my, I was like, I'm going to learn everything. When the kids were taking naps, I was reading books. I was, learning, going to events so that I could get it. And I'm telling you, what happened is I started to meet people who were younger than me, who some had never been to college, didn't have an education, but they were retired and they were millionaires. So it's like, look, if they can do it, I can do this. You can do this. Other people are doing it. And they have the same amount of hours in the day that you have.
Right.
People who run big companies and have thousands of employees, they have the same amount of time that you have. They have the same access to information that you have.
And probably a lot more emails in their inbox, a lot more voicemails on their phone to deal with.
They have other people helping them. So, the bottom line is, there's no excuse. You can have anything you want. You just have to get the education, and the education will give you the gumption to go do it. I assure you.
Gotcha. Absolutely. So let's wrap up here. So for somebody that is wanting to get started in this, you mentioned that 14 years ago Dallas was a hot area. Now you're looking at Southern Florida as a hot area, Central South Florida as a hot area. But I can drive down the street and see a couple for sale signs on houses or whatever, right? So where should I start looking? Is this something that I should look at where is hot now, even if it's 1,000 miles away? Should I be trying to get something that's close and seems like a good deal? Where do I even start looking if I want to get started in this?
Such a good question. Where do you live?
Right now we're in St. Augustine, Florida, which is just south of Jacksonville. But I'm familiar with Central Texas because I was at Texas State University, which is in San Marcos, for a long time, and so that's in the Austin, San Antonio area. So we were there. We were there for 5 years up until last July. So I know we were there, right at this last phase of the Texas housing market blowing up, and I know a few realtors out there that are they're really itchy to get into this rental real estate market out there. And there's a very similar kind of wave starting up here around the Jacksonville area where a lot of people are, there's realtors everywhere. People are buying up properties left and right. There's development starting up left and right. So how, out of all these kind of pockets of areas that seem to be hot and all of these headlines of the next crash is right around the corner, where does all this fall? Where do we even start looking? Do we start looking right now?
I can't answer that in 1 minute, but I did do a mid-year housing report. You can search Kathy Fettke on YouTube or go on our website at Real Wealth Network and look it up. It was my mid-year housing update. And I give all kinds of graphs that will help answer that question. The first thing we look at is where the job growth is and where the population growth is, and affordability. Those three things have to be in line. And then the fourth pillar is infrastructure growth. I want to be in cities that are investing in themselves, because your real estate's never going to do very well in an area that's not growing. I mean, some people like to buy properties in, Jackson, Mississippi or something where it's just, flat. And there is cash flow, but if you have to, repair a roof, that's going to eat up all your cash flow and the value's not gone up on the property. So that's I don't really like doing that. It works for other people. I like to be in areas where I know something's happening. Like I said, those homes in Texas, nobody thought there would ever be appreciation in Texas, but and there hadn't been. But we knew with all these, economic drivers happening in the area that there would be a pop. You just can't build housing fast enough to keep up with that much job growth. So those are the things we look for, and all of the data, and again, I have lots of slides to show it, is showing that the highest demographic shift is going to be towards the Southeast over the next 10 years. It's not just your area, but you're in a great area. You could absolutely get started in your own neighborhood. I live in California. Ain't no chance. We're never going to find a good deal here. It's not going to happen. So I'm forced to buy in your neighborhood. But you're super lucky because you live there. You can invest at home. So it just depends on where you live. If you live in a growing market that has those things, job growth, population growth, and affordability, and infrastructure growth, so again, the fourth thing, then you can just learn how to do deals locally and maybe be more hands-on. If you're a busy professional, then find someone in your area who can do that for you, that you trust. We have a list of those people on our website that we really trust. And then if you are like me, you have to learn how to trust other people, because I literally, there's no way I could find a cash flowing property in LA. It's going to be pretty tough unless I Airbnb it, but now they just outlawed it. So forget it. They're all these landlord laws in California prevent it from being a profitable business. So I just wouldn't do it here. But Florida, you're in the spot. You got it going on. If you're in Georgia, if you're in Texas, you could probably still find deals if you live there. So it's just a different process for you because you could be a little more hands-on unless you're busy. And then you're going to have to treat it the way I treat it, which is like a business. And business owners have to learn how to trust people, right? It's not just, I'm not just going to say, hey, will you take care of my books for me? No, if I'm going to look for a bookkeeper, I'm going to look for a qualified one. And what am I going to do? If I'm going to have somebody in my financial life, I'm going to do some background checks on that person and make sure they have great reviews. I mean, you're not just going to, if you run a business, you're not just going to hire Joe Schmo off the street. You're going to do your research. It's the same with real estate. Treat your real estate like a business and get the best CPAs like you would for your business. Get the best bookkeepers. Get the best inspectors and appraisers. I mean, treat it like a professional business and you will succeed. Treat it like a pastime or like a hobby. It's not going to go as well,
Right. Absolutely. Well, this has been great information. Thank you so much for sharing this. If listeners want to get a hold of you, you've already mentioned your business, the Real Wealth Network, but what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? How do you want people to get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, it's always been my commitment to keep our education free. So that I wanted to be the anti-guru, all these people selling boot camps. I'm like, we're going to do the opposite. So if you join Real Wealth Network, that's real like real estate, wealth like your money, and network as in the network we have nationwide, realwealthnetwork.com. It's free to join. You'll have access to, data on the different cities we like. You'll get referrals to the teams that we've worked with for years, tons of education, weekly webinars. So realwealthnetwork.com, it's free to join. And then the Real Wealth Show, you can listen to that on iTunes or Stitcher or anywhere you can get podcasts. And then my book, Retire Rich with Rentals, is just $20 on Amazon. And it will really give you the basics. It's very simple. People have told me they've read it in a couple of hours on a plane ride or something. I've had teenagers tell me they read it and loved it. So it's pretty simple, but it really outlines the things you need to make sure you do to protect yourself, do it right, so that real estate is a positive experience and not something where you're like, I hate tenants and I hate real estate. I don't want to be that person. So, yep, that's how you find me.
Absolutely. Good deal. We'll make sure that there are links to all that in the description in the show notes so people can get to that. Again, Kathy, thank you so much for being on here. Really appreciate it. Any final words?
No, just keep on learning, and keep clear on what you want, what the end result is. That's the most important.
Good deal. Thank you very much again. And if you are interested in more of the JWell CFO show, we are on YouTube as well as all of the places to get your podcasts, like Kathy mentioned, Apple Podcasts and all those places. There'll be links, of course, to all this in the show notes. You can find me across all the social media at JWell CFO. You can email the show at hello@jwellscfo.com. hello@jwellcfo.com. Links to all this will be down in the description in the show notes. And if you have any comments, please add those to the description, and be sure to like and share this with all your friends and anybody who needs this message of educate yourself and find people you can trust and work with them. So good deal. Again, thank you very much, Kathy, and have a good one.
Thank you. You too.